Well, hi there. So in this video, we're going to do some practice related to per unit short run costs. So let's get started. Okay, so this first section just says redraw this graph and identify some quantities and all this other stuff. It really is just a matter of practicing drawing these particular curves, which I know can be a little challenging for students. So that's really what this is here for. So we're going to first do the quantity and the price. And the first thing to recognize is that this is for a firm. So this is one firm in a huge market with lots and lots of other firms out there. And so this firm is what we call a price taker, where the firm's price is dictated by the market. That's why that says PF. It's not a price floor. It's saying the firm's price. Now, this is the demand for this for this firm's products. It's perfectly elastic. And the reason why we would say that is because this firm, if they were to try to raise their price by even a penny, all their customers are going to go to the other firms that are in this market. So from the firm's perspective, the demand for their product is perfectly elastic. Now, we know that price and marginal revenue are the same value. And you'll sometimes see, like on the internet and some other places, people will call that Mr. DARP, which is for marginal revenue, which is equal to demand, which is equal to average revenue, which is equal to the price. Now, you're almost never going to get asked about average revenue. You will almost always be asked about the price, the demand curve, and the marginal revenue. If you are going to write out something like Mr. DARP, and that's totally okay, you just need to put the equal signs to actually indicate it. Because if you don't, you just wrote like Mr. DARP, that doesn't mean anything, right? So you do need to use some equal signs and actually kind of identify what that literally stands for. Okay, now the next part's the marginal cost curve. Now the marginal cost curve above the average variable cost curve, right above that point, is actually the firm's supply curve. I'm not going to label the whole thing that way because not all of it actually is the firm's supply curve, because especially this downward part, they're not going to stop and only be willing to sell that few units. They're also going to shut down when the firm is below AVC. So that part's not also part of the supply curve either. So it's really only some part of this marginal cost curve that we'd say is supply. Now, the average total cost is going to come down, hit its minimum at the marginal cost, and then come back up again. And the way that we're drawing this, the price and the average total cost are going to be equal to each other at the quantity that the firm produces. And because price and ATC are equal at QF, right? So at QF, price equals ATC, that means they have zero profit, because we know that if the price is bigger than the average cost, then the firm's earning a profit. If the price is below the average cost, then they're losing money. Now, the last curve on here is the AVC, which is going to be below the ATC because the ATC actually includes it. And if you do it really well, this AVC is going to be farther apart than it is over here. And that's because the vertical distance between these two is actually the average fixed cost. And so we know the average fixed cost is going to get smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller as you continually produce more units of output. So now that just redraws that graph, and let's keep rolling. If the price is greater than the ATC, we just talked about that, the firm is earning a profit. If it's equal to it, we know they're breaking even. That's the scenario that's right here. And if the price is less than the ATC, we know the firm is losing money. Now, we haven't really gone through this yet, but we are going to talk about it. If the price is below the ATC, we know they're losing money. If it's above the AVC, they should actually continue to operate temporarily. So it'd be like a restaurant that's open in the middle of the day when there's not very many customers, but there's enough that it kind of covers those costs to the point where it would make sense to actually operate. Now, if the price gets really, really low, in other words, if this Mr. DARP or this kind of demand marginal revenue price line, if it fell really, really low, like if it was way down here, way down below that AVC, then we would say this firm should shut down. So if the price is really, really low, below AVC, and that's the critical part, then we say the firm shuts down. Now let's take a look at fill in VC, FC, TC, MC. The amount of loss if a firm shuts down, that's just its fixed cost. So FC is the slope of the total cost curve. That's actually the marginal cost. And that's because marginal cost is the change in the total cost associated with more units of output. Variable plus fixed cost, that's just total. The added cost of doing something one more time, that's also the marginal cost. Does not depend on the quantity of output produced and exists even at zero output. That's our fixed cost. And then last is the change in total cost generated by producing one more unit of output. That's more of a technical definition for marginal cost. Now let's use true and false. Marginal cost is the change in total cost generated by one additional unit of output. That is true. right? We actually just kind of did that one. Marginal cost is a change in variable cost generated by additional unit of output. That's also true, because the only way that we would say that total cost is ever changing is when variable cost changes. So we would say true for that as well. And the marginal cost curve must cross the minimum of the average total cost curve. And that, we know from drawing the graph up here, is also true. So all three statements here are true. Now, without a calculator, let's see if we can fill in this table. We'll see how we do. The marginal cost of this first unit. Well, we had a change from 0 here, right? We know that there was this 0, and we know that there was no variable cost at the beginning. And so the change was 0 to 10. That actually makes the marginal cost 10. Now, you might be looking at this and going, but how wouldn't this be 0? No, it's not. Because the difference between variable cost and total cost is the fixed cost. And so I actually know that at 0 level of output, the total cost is 20. So I go from 20 to 30, that's going to be 10. Now, when I go from 10 to 18 and 30 to 38, that's 8. And I can figure out my average variable cost here by taking 18 and divide by 2, so that's 9. Now I've got an additional 18 to 31, that's 13. So this one becomes then 51. And again, my marginal cost is 13. And now when I go from 51 to 70, that's 19. And I can either do this total cost minus 20 to get 50, or I could take that 19 and go 31 plus 19 equals 50. Now, average total cost here. Average total cost is the total cost, 51, divided by 3. And so you can do 3 goes into 51, let's see, 17 times. And hopefully that table wasn't too bad. Hopefully this helped you with a little bit of the practice related to costs. I'll see you next time.